All right, well, I wanted to just tell you a brief story, kind of a nightmare scenario that I encountered, I guess it's been about 3.5, 4 years ago. And there was a property that we got into escrow on, a commercial property over on Catalina in Redondo Beach. And I knew the buyer very well, and the sellers were not represented by a realtor. They had owned this piece of property for 30 plus years and had managed it, had leased it out, and finally decided it was time to sell. So the buyer, who knows me, said, well, let's have Guaranty Escrow handle the transaction. They write up the contract in RPA, we get rolling. Title is ordered, of course, and we see that we have an unmarried man. No, a married man as his sole property, as a 50% owner, and we have a trust as the other 50%. We learned from the parties that the trustee of the trust was the sister of the married man, sole and separate. So they had owned the property for many, many decades. Get into taking a look at the prelim, and again, we're looking at the prelim for the first time because there was no listing agent to do some of this early work. Chatting with the title officer says, hey, Wendy, who's Victoria? And I go, what do you mean, Victoria? I don't see a Victoria anywhere. She says, yeah, it looks like there was a death. The individual man died 25 years ago. And this Victoria, his wife, was signing the RPA. Now, there was never, and as we start to kind of dig into this, and escrow's moving along, and EMDs are in, and lenders are calling, we realized that the property was never deeded from married man, sole and separate, to Victoria. And I'm like, well, title officer, we can fix this, right? I mean, he's gone, she's here, she was the wife. The trust side was all fine. It ended up that, and this is just kind of, forgive my crassness, but we realized that the dead guy still owned the property, bottom line. And he had died, like I said, 20 plus years ago. The family had continued to manage the property as though surviving wife was entitled to all right title and, enjoyment of the property. Which, when it comes time to transfer, of course, we realize is not the case. That escrow took 22 months.
Wow.
And we were able, thankfully, to hold on to the buyer. And the buyer, who again, as I mentioned, is somebody that I know I've done many transactions with, he's like, Wendy, is this gonna work out okay? And I was like, well, we're gonna have to probate. So we had to go in and probate the estate of the deceased doctor. And these two will talk about some of the nightmare that goes along with that, finding errors, right? And I'm not gonna go into the technicality, but somehow you have to notify the world that this transaction is about to occur. So that was one of those moments that it was difficult. And thankfully it closed, all the parties agreed, but it could have been a deal breaker for sure.